McMad.
So, a little bit of background. Piss Off Lawyer just decided that he was going to detransition. Piss Off Lawyer is an FTM who is apparently big on Twitter. Aaron has a lot to say about it, so we're going to call him and we're going to see what he has to say. Maybe he can bring me up to speed a little bit because I only know so much. And then, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Where's the... Okay. Hey, let's go. There we are. Okay, we're good. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Bring us up to speed on Piss Off Lawyer, because I know you have a lot of opinions on this.
So this is an account that's kind of just like been in the, in my purview for I don't know, a year or so. Just a kind of like your kind of run of the mill TRA. Didn't really say anything interesting or all that provocative or interesting. Just like your run of the mill just baseline, trans activisty positions. Yelling at TERFs. Talking about how hateful J.K. Rowling is, and just your usual. Again, nothing. The reason that he caught my attention is just because, like, for some reason, he got a lot of attention from the GC crowd, and I think it's because of his habit of not. He doesn't block anybody. He seems to be a lot, a lot more willing to engage with the other side of the aisle than most on his team. But what I just didn't really understand why he got so much engagement or why people were so interested. Because again, he didn't say anything all that interesting. It's just a run of the mill kind of, typical talking points. But most of his tweets were just about like, you just envy me. I have such a full and exciting and happy life because like I can play the guitar and I am a lawyer. And like in all of the posts just included like a selfie of him not smiling and just like a close up like in his car or in his house. It's just like this close up selfie of his face not smiling, and then just a wall of text about how great his life is and how transphobes hate him.
Yeah, and all of his pictures, too, he looks like he's on the verge of tears. That's something that I notice very consistently with him, is he always looks like he's about to cry, and he's talking about how happy he is. That's always been one of the most ironic things.
I don't know if he's, like, actually... I mean, anybody who's making tweets all the time about how great their life is, I mean, that's your number one indicator that their life is not great. I mean, you don't like, I don't know, it's like when people have these things in their... I don't know, like they just like want to project something so bad. I don't know. It's just this trend that I've noticed. I'm not sure if that makes any sense to other people, but what I get from like the selfies he's constantly posting is he doesn't smile because I think he thinks it's feminizing and he wants to look as masculine as possible, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be kind of like the trend of his tweets again, of how like masculine he is, how he was. All the tweets are like either look at how great I am, look at how wonderful my life is, or look at how much these people hate me and are oppressing me. But I'm gonna fight them. I'm a fighter. It's like again just milquetoast TRA content, but it's all just about how great he is or how victimized he is. And that's just been his content for I'd say the last year that I was aware of him.
It's very like
the last 2 weeks. I think I lost your audio.
No, you're good. It's my plugin. So not to cut you off, but like it seems like he's very much like the like soy posting, just typical like platitudes, nothing really of substance, but just giving the typical like run of the mill trans takes that you can get from anywhere. It seems
exactly.
Okay. Okay.
Nothing,
cool.
Yeah, nothing interesting, and that's why it's like I didn't understand why he got so much engagement. But yeah, probably because of his his willing to engage with the people who are disagreeing with him. But again, he doesn't offer anything of substance other than talking about how he's so oppressed because of the criticism.
Yeah.
So I guess for people who aren't familiar, I probably present where I'm coming from here because I might not be. So I have been kind of in the I am a trans man, transitioned like 12 years ago, but I've been primarily a gender critical activist essentially for the last 5 years or so, because I think most of trans medicine and the trans project in general is dangerous. And very, very irresponsible and just causing way more problems than good. And that's been my perspective for a long time. And I usually connect more and have more friendships with detransitioners than I do with actively trans people. So I want to make that clear because I know that a lot of people, I'm getting like all these trans people following me today, all these trans activists following me today. I'm like, you're going to be really disappointed. Like usually when like a detransition announcement comes on and people start piling on this person and just being an absolute asshole to them, I'm there defending them and pushing back against the trans mob who's come for them. But this is a completely different scenario because I think this person has is 100% just wants validation and attention and needs to be love bombed. And this is not a genuine detransition. And I have been seeing it more and more lately. But yeah, yeah, where I'm coming from here is that's where
Right.
my animosity in investment here is I just think it's I know the term grift is overused, but it was just like 2 weeks ago, he started getting piled on by his own side because he said some like apparently transphobic thing to this FDM OnlyFans poster.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, Puck
and
or something.
yeah, yeah. And so they've been like having this public feud that just seems so just childish and petty. But then, okay, the trans mob turned on the lawyer and uh, he basically just started talking about how they're authoritarian and toxic and crazy. Suddenly, when it's directed at him, but when he was part of the mob and part of the one being toxic and authoritarian and ridiculous and just completely having
It's very
insane
Brianna
beliefs.
Wu, like very willing to ride the wave of trans activism until suddenly like trans activism isn't about you anymore, and you have to like make some concessions, and suddenly it's too much, and now the mob is after you.
Right, right.
From what you're saying, that's kind of what I'm picking up. So this is pissed off lawyer right here. This is his page. I'm just showing it on stream real quick. Trying to find a picture of him so I can kind of show people, but yeah, like I've been kind of following this guy here and there. I'm not gonna lie, he got kind of annoying to a point that I kind of had to mute him, which I do quite often, as you can see in like the comments. But this is him right here. And it seems like he's a legitimate lawyer, but I don't know why he would ever advertise this kind of stuff on stream. So, something I've appreciated about you, as I've been kind of like following this, is that you've been like uniquely calling him out for kind of like this grift, which is interesting with you kind of being like on the more gender critical side, I guess. Like, it's interesting to see you kind of criticize him for this kind of stuff. What is it that you like see different from him that you've like noticed in regular detransitions or detransitioners, or like quote unquote real detransitioners, I guess?
Well, so he has not had any change of heart. It's basically what I've seen. It's like his 180. It was a 180. Like suddenly he's at the bottom of this trans mob, and he needs to get essentially external support. He needs to get friends elsewhere, essentially, is what it seems like. And so he just starts saying the most obvious things like, oh, I don't think that neopronouns are valid, or like just
Yeah.
basically saying stuff that it's like, so, so like I tweeted yesterday, essentially, the whole trans movement, I think, has been completely irrevocably off the rails for at least a decade. About 5 years ago, that became evident to people outside of the movement, let's say, or outside of let's say the mainstream. And I think J.K. Rowling had a lot to do with that. And I was a big supporter of her from Jump in June in 2020 for kind of just telling the truth about all this stuff. Um, and yeah, anyway, um, I've been the lawyer had this big public feud with J.K. Rowling just months ago about how she was just a hateful turf and how I'm such a happy trans man, because I was able to transition and you want people like me to suffer and just the usual uh, nonsense kind of like
Yeah.
emotional stuff. Um, but then anyway, so then suddenly, but just in the last few days, he starts saying like, basically there's like all these like gender critical and turf accounts who just start like kind of love bombing him and being like, "Oh, Hendrix is so cool and so brave for standing up to the trans mob and all this stuff." It's like he's not saying anything. Like he only says things like, "Oh, I want to believe. You know, I want people to be able to have rational discussions." Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, like what? And like, and so I was pushing like what in the last few days? Like, okay, what of your views has changed? What do you believe today that you didn't believe 2 months ago? And he was saying I'm a hater for even asking him to explain what he's changed his mind about. And
Yeah.
like there's nothing deeper than I need a mob to love me because this mob is hating me, and identifying myself as a detransitioner is the way to get on the good side of this other team. Um, and it just really infuriates me because, uh, yeah, there doesn't seem to be any internal work happening here. It's all just I need this external validation, and it's just the same kind of stuff that he's always been tweeting about. You know, this is why you should praise me. This is why you should pity me. It's just now
It's
he's just
and
presenting that to a new audience.
it's really funny. I'll see if I can pull it up. If you have any links of you talking to him, if you want to like link those in Discord, I can show them on screen. But no rush if you're
Okay,
not
yeah.
able to. I think it's very funny because like when he was going at it with Puck, just for context, guys, Puck is another FTM, like more on the like I guess like feminine side. He looks more like a twink. He's not like super like built and not looking like Buck Angel or Aaron over here, right? He's like more looking like me, right? So basically, he started going at it with this piss off lawyer guy over some stupid shit. I don't even remember exactly what it was. And piss off lawyer started going after him for being like very feminine or effeminate looking. And I think that's really funny because like people who will posture like that are the fastest to start acting like a woman and like wanting attention. Sorry, not wanting attention, but like wanting validation, I guess is the better way to say it. It sounds like very fucked up of me to say, but you get what I'm saying. It's like very feminine code of behavior of him to like start, I guess like posturing like this and looking for validation from turfs and that kind of thing. I don't know. That is just very ironic of these people who are constantly posturing about other people looking too feminine. But
Right, right, and this is the behavior he was engaging in like just a few days ago. It's very clear like that this is not. Oh, I've had my doubts about the whole process of trying to look like a man, you know, and how I need to make peace with the fact that I'm a woman, and it's like if that's actually the internal world that he was operating in, he would not have been making fun of Puck for being like none of his
yeah,
behavior is consistent with this new public identity he's trying to present. And my thing is I'm not like a lot of people need that kind of external validation and will jump ships whenever they see the tide or the wind's turning or whatever.
right.
Whatever. He's just one person who needs that validation. My frustration is with all of the people just going, "Yay, bravo, so brave, so beautiful." It's like, can you not see how abundantly obvious what he's doing is? Like, it's just that's what's really kind of depressing me, including
Yeah.
my former hero, J.K. Rowling, going for that bullshit as well. Sad.
Yeah, no, she's been in on it too. Hold on, let me see if I can find that. So basically, and Piss Off Lawyer basically had this tweet and it blew up. It's got 13,000 likes right now. It's basically, I'm detransitioning. My name will still be Hendrix. My birth name carries a lot of abuse with it, so Hendrix stays. I will block anyone using my prior name. I was not talked into this or groomed. This is what I want. I made the choice to transition as an adult and the buck stops here. I won't be suing anyone, nor am I angry about it. However, after a lifetime of trauma due to being female and 15 plus years of endometriosis, I disconnected from my female body completely. More gatekeeping could have caught this instead of an all affirmation model. This is why I find the informed consent model to be flawed after 7+ years of transition. So this is kind of what sparked everything. I probably should have led with that, but we're winging it. This is kind of what started everything, and Aaron is right down here. And Aaron, being like the Chad that he is, was saying, savor the welcome to the new cult love bombing. Even better, they only want you to identify as a detransitioner. You can still use your male name and live as a man in your day-to-day life. Cake and eat it too. The only downside are the actual detransitioners whose pain you're wearing like a cool new identity label. That's, in my opinion, that's brutal because that is exactly what a lot of the like neo pronoun people get thrown at with allegations like, oh, this is just like a cool new trend for you. So you seem to be of the opinion this is going to start happening more with detransitioners. Am I right?
Yeah. I've seen
Gotcha.
it with other people. Like I've seen other people do the same kind of, we'll call it a grift, if you will. I mean, it's only for social benefit, not financial, which is usually how grift is used. But yeah,
Fair.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hendrix is not the first person I've seen doing it. It's just he's just the one who's getting the most attention and accolades for it, and the one who seems so overtly obvious. Like he's basically saying right there in the tweet, "I don't regret my transition. I'm not angry that I was transitioned. I'm going to continue using my male name." He doesn't say anything about actually reversing it. He's basically saying, "I'm going to identify as a detransitioner, and I'm going to say that the gender affirmation model of healthcare is dangerous."
Yeah.
Obviously, gender affirmation model of healthcare, I've been
Everybody's got some
vehemently
criticisms of
opposing.
that at this point. Like everybody's got a little caveat about like, yeah, I mean, people should be able to transition, but maybe not push it on kids or maybe not do this or that. Like everybody's got like something that they're kind of like doubtful about at this point. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty anti-transition in most cases for many years now.
Hmm.
Um, uh, um, even I mean, yeah, adults, a lot of therapy. No other option. Yes, I can see certain scenarios where it is uh, perhaps the best solution, but. And obviously, I do not at all regret my transition, despite I think the entire ideology that has enabled it and propped it up is bullshit and dangerous. I personally do not regret my transition. Um, so it's I've had conversations with Hendrix previously where I was like, dude, you don't have to actually detransition to acknowledge the fact that you are female, and that will never change. And he's
Right.
basically like, fuck off. If you think you're a woman, detransition and like leave me alone or whatever. Like we've had this argument before. I'm like, but no, he's decided to. Yeah. Anyway, I don't understand
That's
his
crazy,
behavior.
and I can probably like we could probably get into it about like our different opinions on like transition and the gender ideology and what that means and everything. But just real quick, like it's interesting to me too because I've been through this phase myself of just like God, I don't know what the best way to put it is, but kind of like you were saying, if you think you're a woman, that's your business, like fuck off, like et cetera, et cetera. Like I actually genuinely think like trans rights in the future or like any kind of trans existence in the future has to acknowledge like the biological reality, right? Like that just has to happen. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that you're a female or you're born female, you're born male, like you're not going to get very far in discourse at this point. It seems like most people, like including myself, have like realized, you if you're born female, there's like a certain social class that you're going to kind of like occupy. Depending on like you can debate on like how broad like that goes, but you're always going to be like female to like some degree, right? Like no matter how many surgeries you get, socialization, like the way you're brought up, the way like you're treated and stuff, that's always going to kind of like stick with you. So it's interesting to me because I feel like females especially probably have to come to grips with that like sooner than males. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Like maybe you can correct me, but so it's always interesting to me when I see like an FTM kind of like acting that way. Do you have any thoughts on like why that happens? Why like female to males act in like that denial way, or is it just kind of like a phase that everyone goes through?
I think both do it. I think because it's just kind of baked into the culture. It's baked into like what is supposed to be the trans experience. Is like that's more recent. When I transitioned 12 years ago, we all kind of acknowledged that we were female, at least in the in the FTM spaces that I was occupying. It seemed to be a more recent shift where, in order to be trans, you have to pretend that biological reality doesn't exist, and that seems to be, I think, the premise. And I'm just now as we're talking about this, it kind of occurred to me maybe this is the premise that Hendrix is coming from. Is basically like somebody who no longer believes that biological sex is, well, a fiction, is a detransitioner. Maybe that's where he's coming from. It's like, if you don't actually, because again, in my conversations with him, he basically, it sounded like, okay, if you don't believe this, then you are a detransitioner, and you are like, if you acknowledge or if you say that you're female, then that means that your gender identity is woman, and you may as well detransition. So that could actually be the framework he's still occupying. Is that by if he's rejected any part of the gender ideology construct that makes you a detransitioner. That could be why he's identifying with the label. I still take a lot of issue with that, but yeah. Anyway, that's a different conversation that just kind of occurred to me. But I think there's a motivation to deny, because obviously a lot of we come into this because we are dysphoric about our actual sex, and so when you get this this framework that allows you to say that it's not true that you actually are male, because your brain tells you should be. I think that for dysphoric people, obviously that has a lot of appeal. I know it did to me. I wanted to believe that
Same.
I was male, and
Yeah.
so it's like I believed it, and so I think, yeah, I think it's twofold. Yeah, it's from a place of dysphoria, and it's also kind of taught to you within the culture. It's like, if you don't believe this, then get out. You don't belong. You're not a trans person if you don't believe this kind of
Yeah,
biology
it
denying.
it seems like in some ways trans people will kind of like put that on each other as like, oh, if you're willing to acknowledge your biological sex, you must not be like truly dysphoric or something like that. Like, oh, if you're willing to say
Right,
like, oh, I am a male or I am a
right,
female, you're not like truly trans or something like that. It's like, because there seems to be like a blurring of lines in so far as like what
yeah,
is like acceptable to acknowledge and what isn't. Someone in chat was
yeah.
saying, do you think MTF are quicker or slower to accept? It might have come out wrong. I don't actually know if you can say like one way or another who actually believes, like whether they're like, if you're born male and you believe you're female. I don't know, like if you can actually measure like how much that person actually believes they're male or female, like as far as like who is quicker or slower to accept. That may have like worded that wrong. Basically, like in my experience, like I've seen more MTFs kind of criticizing FTMs for saying like, yes, I am female. Yes, I'm like born female, but I'm transitioning for whatever reason. It seems like for a lot of male to females, it seems like it's like kind of taboo to acknowledge that they're like born male. Then again, I could be completely wrong and just like seeing something from like an outside perspective or whatever. I'm trying not to like, I'm trying as best as I can to not speak on like the MTF side of things because I just genuinely don't know some things. All I can really speak on is like my experience in the community and everything like that. Hope that answers your question, but continue, Aaron. Sorry, did not mean to cut you off there.
Oh, no, 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 you're all good. Yeah. I can't see the chat. Am I supposed to be able to see the chat?
Not
So
really. That's kind of
okay,
like
okay,
for me. But if you pull up my
okay,
stream on like your phone, you can probably see chat. It doesn't really matter that much, though.
okay. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Okay. Yeah. Anything you want to bring up that's said in there? Yeah, please do. Because well, anyway, I don't. I think it kind of goes both ways. I've seen plenty of MTFs who are just as capable of saying I am male, but I'm
Yeah.
doing this to relieve dysphoria. Like, I don't know what the kind of the proportion is or whatever.
I think there is
But
like
yeah, I think
a
it has.
massive stigma against being male. So it is like if people are reticent to acknowledge their birth sex as a male, like it is like very understandable, like from the perspective of like, yeah, I mean, if you're masculine or male or born male, like for a lot of progressive spaces, that's kind of seen as taboo. So I can see why people might not be like willing to, if they are, right. Not to cut you off, but just throwing that out there.
No, no, it's a good point, and it actually it speaks to exactly what I think Hendrix is doing, and others, is they realize there is cultural, there's social value in being being female, right? And saying, I am a
Yeah.
female, I am a lesbian, I have been, abused by the patriarchy. So much of the people who are drawn to the trans thing are, yes, they have this very kind of progressive, like, software running in their brain that says the more victimized I am, the better person I am. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of detransitioners, um, especially the female ones, yeah, they realize that there's enormous social cachet in being, yeah, female, a lesbian, a detransitioner. It's like it gives you so many victimhood points, and that appeals to a lot of people who, sought out the trans identity for a similar motivation. Whereas, yeah, going back to just being a straight male, eesh, that's like just dropping yourself to the bottom of the social hierarchy, despite what we're told to believe about the social hierarchy. It has been upended. Yeah.
No, I hear you. I hear you for sure. It's interesting to me because like I don't know. One thing I find interesting about Hendrix, it kind of going off of like the victim points thing or whatever. I've brought up Brianna Wu a couple times, and it's not just because like I have a hate boner for her or whatever. Although that's like definitely true to a degree. It's also just because the two of them started talking recently. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up, but I know that Hendrix and Brianna were kind of like going after Puck at one point. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. If somebody in chat has happened across it, definitely link it. But otherwise, I'm just going to reference it until I can find it. But I find it interesting that like oh, actually, here's one thing I can pull up. So this screenshot right here, I'll read it out so that Aaron can know what I'm talking about too. So the bottom tweet says, "I'm not blaming the trans community for its own political misfortune. What I'm saying is that the tactics we have been using are not working. Loosening all medical standards to nothing but, quote unquote, I want hormones was not a good idea. Sending rape and death threats to women we don't agree with is not a good idea. Having the community overran by people with neo-pronouns and no jobs is not a good idea. Using terms like birthing person was also not a good idea. We need better public policy and a re-examination of what's worth fighting for. Right now, that's access to appropriate medical care." Okay, so that's the bottom tweet. And then the top tweet, right after saying I'm not blaming the trans community for its own political misfortune, the top tweet right afterwards says, "The current trans rights movement, which has been taken over by lunatics and then wondering why we have zero public support." So it's just kind of like, it's a beautiful shot versus chaser moment of just like, that is absolutely what you're doing. And this is exactly like the bottom tweet quite literally reads like a Brianna Wu tweet that I've like read hundreds of times because she says the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah, so yeah. I find it very interesting that the two of them start connecting and talking. And then like 2 weeks later, Hendrix is coming out and deciding he's detransitioning, but not actually. Like, it's just so weird. And I know you're probably familiar. Brianna's had her entire like FTMs are different from MTFs in like a fundamental way that basically allows me, Brianna, to disregard anything they ever say. That's at least that's what it seems like it has come out of it. So it's like very interesting. Do you have any thoughts on what may have occurred there? We're just purely speculating here. This is purely vibes, but like, just if you have any thoughts, I want to hear them.
Well, did you see what Brianna said today in response to the detransitioning post? Where she's basically like, or "I'm happy for you, wish you the best. Please don't take my rights away," or something.
Yeah. Basically, like, hey, listen, will you still talk to me? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
very fucking weird.
Wanting to push the whole FTMs and MTS are entirely different thing. Like, you guys don't know what you're doing. Here's just one more example. It's kind of like what she's. I think. I don't see. Obviously, I disagree with the "we're all so different" kind of thing because my whole project. So that tweet that you read from Hendrix is like the same shit I have been saying for 7-ish years. It's like, this is lunacy. It's dangerous. Not only are we hurting people, but we are damaging any sort of trans acceptance that we have, earned to this point by just being completely insane and unreasonable and putting men on women's sports teams and in women's prisons. And like, a 3-year-old knows their gender. And like, it's all just, yeah. And like I said yesterday is, J.K. Rowling was pointing out this stuff 5 years ago. And as I said, Hendrix and a few others like him basically are crawling, or what the metaphor I made was that, they were essentially, when J.K. Rowling came out pointing out how crazy this is and how dangerous it is, a bunch of Hendrix and a bunch of the other trans activists decided to just like put the foot down on the accelerator of the crazy bus and just drive the whole trans rights movement further off of the cliff. And now they're basically crawling out of this wreckage at the bottom of the cliff saying, "Here's how we can stay on the road." It's like, guys, this was a lost cause long ago because of your own recklessness. And it just seems kind of, anyway. But the stuff that he's saying now is the stuff that I was trying to get him to acknowledge maybe just a few months ago.
Right.
Not going to have it. But yeah, and again, it's been a lost cause. But my project for the last few years has been, what is gender dysphoria? What causes it? And, And I think understanding the actual psychological experience that is gender dysphoria will help us to have actual solutions, long-term, sustainable solutions for the people who experience it, because the solution we currently have is not going to be available very much longer
Right.
because of the excesses of the trans movement. But also I think the doctors, psychologists, everybody treating us should have known what this is eons ago, but they didn't know, and they still don't know. And anyway, so yeah, link to my channel, the project that the podcast that I co-host with Tali Bots is The Navel Gaze, where we talk mostly about how we think gender dysphoria is the result of auto heterosexuality, and that's something that I've been talking about for a few years now. On Twitter and my previous podcast with Aaron Kimberly, Transparency, and yeah, generally tweeting and substacking about for a long time now.
Yeah. And it's an interesting theory. Like, not to cut you off, but just to elaborate a little bit for chat, it is an interesting theory that like Aaron and Tali have kind of like been talking about. I went on their podcast too, like a little while back, just talking about like autoandrophilia and like kind of exploring some of the reasons why, like especially females may like be interested in transitioning. Do I have that correct?
Well, so I
don't know if it's like female specific or not. I know you've had like a lot of male to females on as well, but.
Right, so I think so. Autoheterosexuality, as it presents in males, is going to be autogynephilia, and as an autoheterosexuality, as it presents in females, is going to be autoandrophilia. So it's the dysphoria. We believe we are hypothesizing that that gender dysphoria is the result of not being able to distinguish what one is externally attracted to and what one should physically embody, what one should physically be, and that is. What the gender dysphoria that autogynephiles experience is feeling like in order to feel comfortable in their skin, they need to look like a woman because that is what they believe has value. That's what they find attractive. In order to be attractive and feel, like worthwhile as a human themselves, they should also be that. And I believe I've spent many years talking to trans men. I have spent many years talking to butch lesbians and reading like historical accounts of all of us and just lurking for years in all the various forums. And I think it's the exact same thing that's happening in females, is a desire to embody masculinity, and it is a misdirected attraction to males that backfires into the self. This usually in females historically manifests as butch lesbianism because we are able to be masculine relative to a feminine partner. But then once medical transition was on offer, we started flocking to it in droves, and so many became gay trans men after transitioning. And this also requires it just makes perfect sense with the autoandrophilia theory. It's like once you have solved your dysphoria and embodied masculinity, you can pursue attraction, you can pursue relationships with other men, because that no longer feels feminizing and dysphoria inducing, and therefore that attraction that was previously blocked out by dysphoria surfaces. That's again where I think that common shift from going from lesbian to gay post transition.
And that makes a lot of sense. I feel like I definitely like identified with that like to a degree. I'm going to quickly. There's a couple of things in chat that I think will be interesting. Cianova says like there's definitely a lot of internalized misandry in the MTF community. That's referencing what we were talking about earlier, as far as just like why like female to males might be more accepting of like their biological sex versus the other way around. Andy9538 says, is it possible that part of Hendrix's problem could be imposter syndrome, a feeling of if I enjoy some kind of privilege from being female, I must not really be a man? What do you think of that?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know that much about his individual psychology. I just see what he puts on social media, which is very clearly, it seems like everything he does is motivated by getting external validation. And so I don't know how much. I obviously think that he fits into my autoandrophilia theory. He like all of his selfies are all about trying to look as masculine as possible. I think that's why he doesn't smile because he thinks it's feminizing or whatever. Like I think, and that's another thing that I've noticed with who I kind of are easily to clock as AAPs. They post so many photos of themselves because they're just in love with their reflection. Like
Yeah.
that is what's going on there, right? The constant selfies, the constant. It's just I think that's. And that behavior also does not suggest that one is quickly looking to undo their new masculine. Because like you don't post selfie after selfie if you don't like the way that you look, you don't like the effects of testosterone. You're not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can kind of like so it's funny. I can kind of understand, especially like lately for myself. I think the way I grew up and everything, like for some reason the element of like misogyny and like being born female, I've been looking past at a lot of like my looking back at a lot of my like past experiences, like growing up, whatever. And I've definitely realized like, oh, you know what, being a woman probably played a role in a lot of like my bad experiences in the world, way more than I thought they did. Not saying that's the only reason everything happened or that I had all these like negative experiences, because dysphoria was definitely still a part of it. But I find it interesting because as a result, like being born female has been on my mind like a lot more, not just in like a dysphoria sense of like, oh, you know, like I've got the female sex characteristics, but also just like socially, there's like an implication there of being a woman or being female sometimes. This might just be because like I'm having a very latent realization that a lot of people like, or a lot of females have in their teens that I just did not have until recently. So that may be why it's like hitting me all at once. But as a result, like there have been moments where I'm like, damn, like is transition like right for me or whatever. I've always still held that yes, it absolutely is. Like I've not regretted it a single time. But like I wonder sometimes if people like Hendrix are going through like that kind of a phase of like questioning themselves and questioning things that they like realized about or that they initially thought about transition that ended up not being true. The only problem is that I'm barely like 3 years into it. Like I'm just like, I think this December it's going to be 3 years, and for Hendrix it's been like 7+. So I don't know how you go for like that long and never have any of these like thoughts or realizations about being born female, and that it's like only now hitting you when it also happens to be like culturally more acceptable to be that way because politically tides are turning and whatever. So I find that pretty interesting because I have had a genuine like I've had like genuine introspective moments about like all of this. And so far so good. Haven't had any complaints. I'm certainly not going to complain if I change my mind because this was all like out of my own free will. But it is still like interesting that like I don't know if females tend to have these like realizations about like, oh, you know, I actually can't escape certain aspects about being female, or if it is just like for Hendrix, it is just like a what do you call it? Overton window type thing. Hope that made sense. I kind of stuttered through that.
No, I follow you. I think well for you it's very different because you're clearly you don't post for validation. Like you're obviously
Yeah,
quite
it's
like
fair.
you're curious and like you like obviously everybody likes the engagement online and whatnot, and that's what we do it. But you know, it's like you seem to be kind of a really kind of like outward looking curious person. Obviously you're also very introspective, but you're not your behavior online doesn't indicate that you are craving external validation.
That's
And
fair.
I
Yeah.
think and I think in Hendrix behavior has always, regardless of what you know, as the trans activist or as now the detrans GC activist, you know, as of what 5 minutes ago, it's the exact same behavior. I think that for a lot of people, we have who are in the trans community or actively in transition or however you want to talk about it, just trans people in general. The idea, the kind of again, it goes back to it being twofold. It's like we have the dysphoria about what our actual sex is, and then also this ideology that we flock to because of that dysphoria tells us to ignore those things, right? It's like if you start having those thoughts about like, oh, was this right for me, or I am always going to be female, that's never going to change. The community's right there to say, oh, that's transphobic brain worms, like, you know, basically that's your transphobic programming that's seeping through or whatever. So there's like ways, and I think that's one of the reasons people cling to it so firmly is because we do have that, until we make peace with the fact that we are our sex and that can't change. We are very insecure about it because obviously we know what our biological sex is. Like,
Right.
It takes active mental effort to pretend we don't know, and that's what the ideology is there to do. So yeah, I think all trans people have that on running in the background, regardless of what they're posting online. But
the
yeah,
public
it's just the fact.
the proactive like public posting about like oh, I'm switching sides now and stuff, that indicates like it's a bit more shallow than just like having a personal internal realization. Is that right?
Right. Well, yes, and exactly. It's like he was so publicly anti-turf, and now he's so publicly turf. Like on the like, this is not a slow interpersonal like, oh my god, have I made a mistake? What have I been doing all these years? Let me reevaluate all of, like, when people detransition, or when people decide, like, it's months of, oh my god, what have I done? And then like slowly, untangling it in your own mind before you're like, okay, this is what I need to do to move forward. And okay, I guess since I'm doing this and I'm online, I need to make an announcement about it. That is not at all what Hendrix has done. It's very, very, whatever, hardcore trans activist to suddenly, oh, you know what? I think it's kind of dumb, and I'm still Hendrix. I'm not really physically changing anything, but I identify as a detransitioner now. Like, it's just so, yeah. We are watching just a plea for approval, and there could be something much deeper going on there, of course, but yeah, that doesn't seem to be the trend of behavior.
Yeah, that's I definitely hear what you're saying, and I agree. I'm also looking up like old Hendrix tweets now because I want to like get some like contrast between now versus then. I may have found something. I'll read it out on stream. We'll see if it holds up. One sec. Let me see if I can get this. Okay. So I have here, why do all detrans females go straight to being very feminine if they all claim that A, masculine women are just fine, and B, the trans people are the ones pushing regressive gender stereotypes. Not all women are feminine or have to be. It seems like a lot of unresolved trauma and projection going on. So I don't know. It's just very interesting thing to come across from April 15th of this year. But like, that's how fucking fast this guy like switched up. So that's crazy.
Well, that does indicate like he's like toying with the ideas around like detransition and what that means and everything.
True.
So yeah, there could have been something spinning already there, but he then still continue on to dismiss everything as transphobic.
Fair enough. Oh my god, holy shit. Okay, 1 second, I found this. I'm fucking dying. Hold on. This is just oh shit, hold on. Let me link it to you so you can see it as well.
Okay.
1 sec. How do I get out of full screen? Oh, here we go. Sent that to you. I'm fucking dying. 1 sec.
I don't know how to. Why can't I see this?
Oh shit, dude! I'm fucking dead.
I can't. Could you link it in?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me link it one more time. Let me link it one more time. I don't think I linked it right. 1 second. Oh my god, dude.
Well, it shows that I've got like a message from you, but I can't seem to access it. This is my first time using Discord for. Oh wait! I think I got it.
That's one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
Who did that?
It's just some fucking nobody that just like I guess was trolling on this. I came across it when I was.
It just looks like kind of nasty bullying. I don't know. I do not like shit like that. It's just like
okay, my bad. I didn't mean to. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like a lot of the posts where he looks all mad and miserable, it's like he's just trying to look masculine, and everybody's like, "Oh, look at how depressed and terrible." Like, I think the kind of not enjoying your life is kind of evident by constantly tweeting about how great your life is. Like that to me is more telling. But like, I think the faces
Fair.
that he's always making is more indicative of just like, I think he feels like he looks feminine when he smiles, and so he doesn't smile. That's what
I think you're probably right about that. I've kind of harped on like the way he looks in pictures like probably a little too much. I do find the face like very fun because it is like trying so hard. Laura said, and to be buddy buddy with notable bigots who were bigoted towards them. Like that's a good point. It's just like and so quickly people are willing to like suck up to people that have been pretty terrible towards them in the past. And it's like I'm like half and half on what TERFs have to say. I think like sometimes they like raise decent points, other times they're just absolutely deranged. So it's kind of like hit or miss with some of them. But like people like J.K. Rowling, it's like
on every side.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like everybody's got like their unhinged maniacs. I will say like I think a lot of times the trap that people fall into, it's not so much like an overt bias of like trans people suck, that kind of thing. It's more just like people will say shit like well, kind of like what Hendrix is saying is like, oh well, the trans community, it's really alienated all of its voter base or any of its supporters. It's a real problem, but it's this like hyper focusing on the insanity in the trans community and completely ignoring all the insanity in any other group and making it sound like a trans specific thing when really it's just like, I'm sorry, but like it was in 2016 when people were complaining about feminazis or like, and though a lot of those people have become TERFs now because like their entire identity was wrapped up in being a woman. And that was like the cool thing to do back then. And now they're not cool. And it's like, I think that's partly why some of them are probably salty. Right. So it's just like, it's interesting to me. This is something I've had a problem with like Brianna and Hendrix now. And like pretty much anybody I've seen go down this like transgender pipeline is that they become very, very critical of the trans community when a lot of the criticisms you make of the trans community or even like the left more broadly is like you can make those criticisms about pretty much any group of people, including people who pretend like they're not like that, Brianna Wu is a great example of somebody who really tries to pretend to be reasonable, but is like one of the most retarded people you'll ever meet in your life, So again, bringing her up, but yeah.
I'm probably again not going to be the favorite of many of your viewers. Is like, and I agree with the things that Hendrix is saying now. I just wish people like Hendrix had been saying them 10 years ago, or at least 5 years ago, before it's been irrevocably, it's just like, I feel like the trans community, so, and a lot of those other groups and those movements that you're referring to, that they're kind of pejoratively referred to as woke. I'm anti most of that stuff. I just see that, and I regard the trans portion of that as being like the most unhinged from reality, and the part that's like the most gonna basically have the entire postmodernist house of cards fall. Is the kind of trans stuff that I think is just like.
A lot of the like everything is vibes type thing. Nothing really has to be defined. It's all everything is valid type thing. Is definitely. And I think a lot of people are growing kind of like tired of that. I hate to say it. That might just be like me projecting. I do have someone in chat saying like, I agree not every TERF is problematic, but J.K. Rowling is like awful and arguably. I don't know how you feel about J.K. Rowling. I do find her to be like on the more insufferable side of like TERFs personally. Not really because of like I find some of her takes annoying, but I do find she seems to exhibit some of that same like behavior of wanting like approval from other people. It's like a lot of the times when she's dunking on like trans women or whatever, it does seem just like absolutely unnecessary like type of behavior,
So I was a huge J.K. Rowling fan. I'm still a huge fan of of her intellectual material. I was incredibly impressed with her with that when she started speaking out in 2020. I just became like absolutely head over heels for her and everything, because I agreed with everything. But then she started to get in the last, especially I'd say the last few months, just kind of like a nasty bully sometimes. That was just Yeah, so I was actually just talking to Tali about this because she, J.K. Rowling has fallen for the Hendrix thing, and she fell for I don't know if you know who Transphobe 01 or AKA
Shit.
Anna, AKA Ari.
I don't know. I don't.
Like that's an MTF who is identifying as a detransitioner,
Oh,
while
this
clearly not.
person. I know this
Yeah,
person. Yeah.
absolutely deranged. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Not making no effort whatsoever to like still doing the high trans woman voice, still wearing female typical clothes, female typical haircut, and then when you point this out to their the turf simps, they're like, oh well, what's a female to anyone can wear anything, don't be sexist, it's like, yes,
Yeah.
of course anyone can wear anything, I don't care, but the point is that you clearly see by the way that they're presenting themselves, they want to be interpreted feminine, female, etc. Hendrix is
Yeah.
going to continue to present in a way that he believes people will prefer and see him as male masculine. They don't. The two of them, these are like kind of most recent and most prime examples of this behavior I'm referring to. Is like they want the social. They want the social kudos that comes with identifying as a detransitioner, while
Yeah.
very much still in their everyday life presenting as what they want to present as, which is the opposite sex.
It's almost like the
And
new woke thing to do now is to like virtue signal about how you recognize your like biological sex to a degree. This transphobo 1 person, like I've had interactions with them like on their old accounts, and they very much are like they're a trans woman, but they will constantly post about I'm a gay male, I'm a gay male, I'm a gay male, and it's just like, okay, at this point you are just so fucking AGP, it's unbelievable, and you're
right,
probably better
right,
off just admitting that. It's the same with Brianna. It's just like
right,
this like
yeah,
it's almost like they think being a gay male makes them more of a woman, which in turn just validates the entire homophobia argument about the whole thing. It's just like, no, it's okay to just be AG. It's
yeah,
fine. It just transition.
yeah.
If you weren't so hellbent on taking away like medical transition from AGPs, like you wouldn't have this problem. But it's because you hate yourself. Like it's
Yeah, yeah,
insane. Like
no,
it's fucking crazy. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of bonuses that the gay identity gives them. So one of my when I've been so vocal, like kind of again, I've been like in the GC activist ranks for many years, but the last year or two, it's become so cringe. It's basically like this homosexual supremacy cult.
yeah,
As I
yeah.
refer to it, it's like they think that just gay people are, God's gift to the world, and straight people are, uh, I think there's a reason, like one of the reasons for that is like, oh, well, we're still progressive and good people because we're pro-gay while we're being anti-trans, right? I think that's how they kind of make sense of it, or like they're allowed to be, um, yeah, it's basically, I'm still a good progressive liberal. I love gay people so much. But that's one part of it. But another part of it is, I've said this fairly recently, is for a lot of people, homosexuality is its own kind of gender dysphoria relief. It's like, I'm not, like a lot of the detrans women won't really, they'll call themselves lesbians, but not women, right? They over-identify with the lesbian label because it's like somehow they're less of a woman if they're lesbian. It's almost like a non-binary. It's emotionally doing the same thing non-binary does that they make
Yeah.
fun of, but basically being homosexual does the same thing for them. It essentially separates them from their actual sex in their brains. And so Anna's doing two things, or Ari, whatever she's going by these days, is doing two things by I'm a gay boy. She's in her fucking 30s and she's a gay boy.
That
But
and see, it's so funny because if you're FTM and you make that you do that same thing, you get branded as like a cringe fujoshi. You know what I mean? Like that's another crazy
right.
thing about it. It's like you get shit on so hard if you call yourself a gay boy as an FTM, but if you're an FTF doing it, suddenly it's okay. Like it's just cringe. Period.
Well,
Like
yeah, like it's autogynephilia relief.
yeah,
It's autoandrophobia relief. It's like if I'm like what the thing that I hate most is being an adult straight male. Like that's just they can't abide it. So if they're a gay boy, there's like it makes them kind of seem young, vulnerable, not, I don't know.
yeah,
Part of it too is like again what we're doing at the Naval Gaze. It's about how this auto heterosexual experience creates actual external homosexual attraction. So they're not
yeah,
lying when they say they're gay. Like it is so because being gay, having has homosexual relationships, um, either for females or males on either side of the whole trans thing. Homosexuality does, in a way, provide the same kind of dysphoria relief that that transition does.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's what. So if Hendrix does stick with the trans label, um, I see her continuously referring to herself as a lesbian and not a woman, just because they can't do that. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. I've been I'm a very slow reader, so I'm very slowly getting myself through Judith Butler. Just because I want to get a bit more background on like the history of like all this gender theory and whatever. And so far, I've actually found her way more interesting than I thought I would. I thought I would have a lot more critiques, but a lot of her observations and stuff are actually incredibly like accurate. And I think at least I'm only through like the first chapter, which to be fair is like a quarter of the book, but I think a lot of the things that people like extrapolate from her arguments are wrong. But her actual words, like if you read the book, she does say some really interesting stuff. The entire idea of lesbian being like a third category has been a thing. Like that is a thing that like people have discussed in the past. I've even heard like they fabs, quote unquote, like in my like real life, talk about how they see butch lesbians as kind of like a third option, like a third gender type thing. So that kind of stuff has been around, and I wouldn't be surprised if like people like Hendrix, like again, assuming that there's like a good faith introspection happening there, maybe that's part of it, right? I was also going to say like before you said that, and it caught my attention. Are you familiar with Pariah the doll by any chance? Do you know who that is?
Vaguely.
So they are
AGPD transitioner, right?
They are probably AGP. In my opinion, I think most people are probably AGP, AAP. Like most trans people probably are that way.
Yeah.
But like they were extremely HSTS coded, very like hyper passing because they were like they transitioned young, and they recently decided they were going to detransition as well. I'll pull up them for stream. But they now go by Miles Yardley, and they're like incredibly like they look like a 13-year-old boy now, and it's very funny because it's again this very interesting dichotomy of like, well, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but this very interesting like situation where you end up looking more FTM than you do like male because you've been transitioning for so long, and it's like I think in my opinion it's like another aspect of like this fetishization of like detransitioning and like kind of going back to your roots type thing. Just adding that on as far as like this trend we're seeing of like people who are going down this pipeline or like down this road of like, oh, I've changed my mind actually because this is like a cool thing to do. I think they even said like in like their like gay way of they were basically like being trans just isn't giving anymore or something like that. Like they were just basically saying it's not the vibe anymore. Like it's not cool anymore. Now maybe that's cope. I know they were converting to Catholicism as well, so there was a religious aspect to them. I think Buck Angel actually interviewed them at one point, so he's on Buck's podcast. But just like another instance of like detransitioning and like kind of like changing their mind on this thing, but not really doing a whole lot to change because they still look incredibly effeminate, just like Hendrix still looks like incredibly masculine. So it's just like, do you feel like I'm interested. I'm curious. Do you feel like this is like the new non-binary movement of like people who are like, oh, they don't really identify as man or woman, but they'll identify as a detransitioner? Do you think that might be like the new like non-binary phase or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that so many detransitioners hyper identify with being a detransitioner is because, yes, it does provide them with some sort of like a non-binary thing. It's like they're not quite their sex. And I'm seeing a lot of detransitioners now saying that they are projecting the detrans. It's like, I'm just a woman. I'm not a detrans woman. I respect that. Like, that's, yes, good. Move on from it, you know? But, but I think for so many, they need something that again is not, they see being like a straight member of their own sex is the worst thing. And so if they are like even when they detransition, they're gonna hyper cling to the detrans label or to being homosexual. But if they aren't capable of homosexuality, if they're strictly heterosexual, then they're gonna cling hard to the detrans label because again, that's that non-binary essentially designation. I mean, I think that auto heterosexuality, AGP and AAP, have been the cause of homosexual identity and lifestyle from the beginning. I think there is
Yeah.
a lot of other causes for homosexuality, but I think this is a primary one and always has been. And then once transition was on offer, obviously we just jumped on it because that was a more radical solution to what we were solving with the homosexual lifestyle, relationships, etc., identity. And then so once they realize that the trans trend is off the rails, it's socially um, uh, much more vilified going into the future than it was, 10 years ago or so. And I don't think it's not a reputation that we're going to correct. I think that they see that, right?
Right.
And they're realizing to get off the bus sooner rather than later. But they still have that underlying need to not be a regular member of their own sex. And so, yeah, detrans label, homosexual label, um, some way, or like,
Right.
yeah. Uh,
It seems like there's kind of like almost like an oscillating, like, depending on what's socially acceptable, it'll kind of determine how like a certain group of the trans community will identify. So if it's more acceptable to be trans, like they'll lean more into that. But if it's not as acceptable, then, social pressures kind of like, it kind of moves them back to homosexuality, which is like interesting phenomenon. Cause, it goes on to like kind of reinforce the idea that this is not like a strictly medical thing. There's clearly like a social aspect to transition and like identity in general, which like, I mean, at this point for me, it's just undeniable that you cannot box this into like a strictly medical label or like a medical diagnosis. I think there's probably like biological aspects to it, but I think like Hendrix is a great example. Miles, like a lot of these people who are detransitioning are a great example of like how society and like social influence will like have an impact on how people identify. And it seems like we're swinging back a little bit more into right-wing territory. So it's safer in a lot of ways to identify as like a cishet, like, or cisgender or homosexual than like to identify as trans. So it's interesting. And they all seem to justify, well, not all of them, but a lot of them seem to justify it with like the optics arguments of just like, oh, well, the trans community just made us look so bad. We don't want to deal with this anymore. I disagree with that. I think it's probably a little bit deeper than that, than just like the optics. I think that's a bit of cope, but like, that's, it's interesting phenomenon for sure. So you've mentioned a couple times in this conversation that you've been kind of against the gender, like you've been on the gender critical train for quite some time, and you've been very critical of like the TRA stuff. I'm curious then, what would you say is like, if you had to make a prescription, you're king of the transgenders now, you get to make all the decisions about how it's going to look. What would your like policy prescriptions be, insofar as like what's acceptable and what isn't?
As far as like
Medicalization and just like who should transition, who shouldn't. Like, is there a line that you draw for minors versus adults? Like, should some adults not be allowed at all, or are you kind of on the like informed consent train, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not on the informed consent train, especially since we don't even know what gender dysphoria is. Our doctors don't know what it is. So where I would start is actual research, non unideological, completely objective research into psychologically what this is, why so many of us are on the autism spectrum, like what's going on there, why. Well, obviously, I have a theory as to that, so that's sticking in my brain. But stepping back from my own theories, it's like we need people actually studying this, figuring out what gender dysphoria is, because I do believe that we will find out that it can be ameliorated in ways other than transition. But then I think so. I don't think any minors should transition. I think that should be just a baseline. I do not believe in pediatric transition at all. I think adults in their right mind should be allowed to do, pretty much what they want, within reason. But when we're talking about making very drastic and often dangerous medical decisions, there should be a lot of mental evaluation and healthcare involved in that. And more going back to my original point, we should know what it is that drives people to want to do this. We need to have a very thorough understanding of what that is. That will also help us determine whether or not it's going to be a passing life fad, or if it's going to be a fundamental, stuck with your entire life, part of your psychological makeup.
Interesting.
I think understanding that, because I think a lot of detransitioners are indeed what we know of as rapid onset gender dysphoria, right? The Rajni girls who was exposed to it in their college friend group, or at their middle school, whatever, on their Harry Potter fandom page. Like, there is a lot of people who there are a lot of, especially females. I don't think this really happens in males, who do transition as basically a commitment to a psychological, to an ideological cause. They see like gender fuckery as like this sort of noble thing to do, and it demonstrates that you are totally progressive and not at all a cis het oppressor. And so I think there are socially motivated transitions. And then those people it's actually funny because I think those people are less likely to detransition, at least not publicly, than the more AAP transitioners, just because it kind of like, it requires reckoning with an entire worldview that you adopted, because they transition for much more abstract reasons. And so they have to kind of undo their worldview that kind of led them to it before. Whereas people who are like, oh, I really wanted to be male, I realize I can never be male, I don't like what I've done, I want to go back. Like, that's a more straightforward kind of detransition. But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more messy with the more kind of typical ideologically motivated transitions.
So
for that reason,
go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to.
Yeah. I was just going to say, because I do think, yes, that there is an ideal. There are people who transition due to kind of a passing adolescent female typical clinging to a friend group ideology, etc. It's a normal part of adolescent female development to do that. This one just kind of really perverted it and took it way too far. There is that facet of transition, and we need to distinguish that from somebody who, like, again, Buck Angel, we don't use him as an example because he's like, looks so manly or whatever, but because he was so committed to, I have to do this. He did it before there was the internet, before, we all kind of passively absorbed, it's like, this is not something that he's ever going to, it's not going to leave him, like, it's
right.
Like, we need to be able to find the people who is like, this is a coping mechanism for something else going on in your life, or this is 100% part of your sexual psychology and always will be. I think we need to fundamentally understand what gender dysphoria is in order to determine that. I'm not saying there are true trans and the fake trans, absolutely not.
No.
I just think
I hear you.
There are, yeah.
It seems like so it seems like what you're saying is like it should be almost like the way people used to talk about abortions, like safe, legal, rare, like to like keep it safe, keep it but it should be like the last resort type thing. I
thank you. That well said. Yes.
Yeah. No, you're good. I hear that. I've been kind of like on the fence with that kind of stuff. And I do think this kind of does, like, it still kind of ties into like Hendrix and all that. It's just because I feel like that safe, legal, rail, like, yeah, sure, right. You don't want to make people feel like they're pushed to take hormones or inject things into their body that they might not otherwise be okay with doing, just because like it's culturally acceptable to see that as a solution, right? So like you don't want to encourage people to do something that they might otherwise not be interested in, just because they're having a crisis of identity in a time or in a day and age where like identity crises are just becoming more of a thing nowadays. I don't know if it's because of the greater usage of social media, or if it's like the higher rates of loneliness and like depression and other things. If I'm going super lefty with it, I might even say that like, capitalism in general has like isolated people more and caused them to stress out and have more of these like identity problems. So there is that aspect of just like, you don't want to push people into something. And that's the same with like any big pharma thing right now. Like, oh, you're feeling depressed because you're working your ass off and you still can't afford rent after like 3 jobs, right? take some SSRIs and now you're good, right?
Right.
Like you don't want to encourage
Right.
that kind of thing, you know. Especially with like the on a level of gender right now. You've got males who are going through like a severe not, no pun intended, transition insofar as like typically like male traits like strength, leadership, that kind of stuff. It takes on a different form now. And you don't need to be the super hyper macho man anymore. In fact, you're probably better off being like a more quote unquote effeminate guy. Not to the point where you're like a literal twink, you know, who wants to get pegged or whatever, but just on the level of like you're more in touch with your feelings and whatnot. Like girls tend to like that shit more nowadays than they used to back in the day, where, you know, traditional masculinity was more accepted. So when for male to females, I feel like when you take that into account, and you've got a lot of men who don't feel like they belong anywhere, and it doesn't seem like there's any space for them to really grow and develop as males in their own right. It does seem like, you know, maybe a lot of those people are going to transition as an option, whereas like otherwise they wouldn't. Especially with the internet, 4chan, all this stuff. Like it seems like there are these like grooming spaces, not using that word loosely, but just like for lack of a better word, spaces where they're getting influenced to try and mess around with estrogen and play around more with like a feminine identity. Same with like female to males, and this is like something you and I can probably relate to like in different ways, is that I don't know how much space either of us really had growing up to be masculine and be accepted and not kind of have that blow up in our face in a way that would in a way that might change like the way we see ourselves. I feel like a lot of times the way people react to us, even subconsciously, will have like an influence on how we perceive ourselves as well. So if we act ourselves and we're being ourselves, and that's not enough for people, like that, they're still like that's still not acceptable to them. It may have an influence on like how dysphoric we feel about ourselves and how we see ourselves like going forward. I don't know. I'm still kind of figuring this out for myself as well. I've definitely looked back at a lot of instances where I'm like, you know, the only female in an all male group, and I'm looking back at like some experiences and I'm like, oh, they did see me as a woman the whole time, even if they were claiming that they saw me as a guy, right? Like that kind of thing. You hear sometimes about like FTMs they get with a guy who's claimed they're accepting and all that, and they really see them as a woman the whole time, like, you know, that kind of thing, right? I think females do like have a unique struggle. There is like a unique experience there, and I think that like similar to the male side, there isn't very much space for females to like kind of explore identity outside of like the non-binary gender fuckery, right? So that might be a reason why that's like the same way you're seeing more MTFs. I wonder if that's why you're seeing a lot more like non-binary and FTMs, is that there is more like interest in just exploring like different gender identities to kind of get away from like the bullshit of being female, or to like kind of explore your identity as a female, but also being something else. You know what I mean? So I think like generally, like I guess like TLDR, because that was a long rant. Society in general right now is in a place where it's it has given both males and females like a lot more space to kind of experiment with their gender and their identity and stuff. And I think that has a big influence on like what you're seeing for like trans culture, and like the talking points you're seeing from anything from like true trans, like a AGP denial type thing, to everything's valid, everything's okay, just, you know, you can just put pronouns in your bio and that's all you have to do for transition. Like I think the whole thing is like kind of more like it encompasses like a broader societal like a trend that we're seeing insofar as like how males and females are starting to perceive themselves and it in the context of their own self-image, and then in the context of like the society that they're in. And that's gonna kind of like vary depending on like which part of the country you're in, obviously. Yeah, so it's very interesting stuff. I'm definitely on that. All being said, I think the medical gatekeeping I'm on the fence on. I know I don't mean to just like go on and preach, but just to get it out there, I am kind of like on the fence with the medical gatekeeping stuff, just because all that society stuff being said, I don't know how you can accurately implement a medical gatekeeping system that does not accidentally leave out people who may truly be dysphoric, but have no way of expressing that in a way that would be legitimate in the medical system we currently have, you know? So I would definitely be on like the you know, get more research train. But because there is such a heavy societal influence, at least there seemingly seems to be such a societal influence, I'm kind of on the fence of like, how do you mitigate that, or how do you moderate that in a medical setting without excluding people who could genuinely benefit from like medical transition, you know? So I tend to be on the informed consent train as far as like, you know, unless like you're schizophrenic, you're diagnosed schizophrenic or something, you know, maybe you should get on some antipsychotic meds before you transition, right? But outside of like those kinds of cases and like super small minors, like I don't know if I can fully agree with the medical side of things. So no, that was a long rant, but I hope that makes sense. I don't know if you have a like response or some way to like push back against that.
Well, no, I love what you were saying about like our kind of like sense of identity now in the modern world. I completely agreed with all of that, and like kind of we are both at the same time kind of like hyper inundated with information and connection to the world around us, while being quite lonely and isolated relative to normal human, you know, how we've always lived our lives, you know, previously in all previous generations. That is, and then yeah, we've got these kind of atomized capitalist jobs that are again completely disconnected from how like the way that we used to live our lives, you know. Again, all previous well, I'd say like the last 50 years has kind of been this kind of atomized nuclear experience. So while at the same time, yeah, we're kind of like siloed, we have access to all this information, and all of the boundaries around what's required of our lives have been totally removed. Like it used to be like, um, a girl knows what, based on, her socioeconomic class, where she lives in the world, exactly what her life is going to be. A boy knows the same thing, right? And there isn't an alternative. Like you might hate it, but it's your only option. You're not,
Right.
now we have like this infinite, limitless options these kids are being presented with, including, oh, do you want to, be the other sex? Like there's no boundaries at all to what we are potentially able to do with our lives, and I think it's kind of debilitating. Like too many options is not really good for us. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why we're psychologically much worse off, despite all kind of reasonable or tangible metrics saying we should be flourishing. Um, but yes, I think that kind of influx sense of identity, not having this concrete guardrails around who we are and what we can expect of our lives. Um, yeah, I don't think that freedom is necessarily actually as good for us as we'd like to pretend it is, or we'd like to believe it is. Um, and I think yeah, this and kind of putting transition into the mix is one of those things that I don't think ultimately it has been beneficial for us. But yes, this is the world that we live in, where these things are,
I
available.
I definitely
But I think
yeah, go ahead, sorry.
it just goes back to the research, understanding, where this feeling comes from, and then I think we have a better idea of uh, who will be best served. Because I do want to be cautious about people who, desperately right now know that they want to transition, but 10 years down the line, just no longer what they want, and there's no going back from it. It's like,
Right.
yeah,
And
I just
that's
think more research.
and I hear what you're saying with that. I think that's why like I think the informed consent thing is like important. And it goes more into like an argument about like, okay, who can really consent and who can't. I think if you're able to like if you can't figure out who has dysphoria or what dysphoria is, I think a second best option is like figuring out who can consent and who can't. And drawing like a line there at least is because again, if you have people who are like super delusional or like they're struggling with other like psychotic issues, they obviously can't actually consent no matter how much you inform them, right? If you're able to consent and you are informed genuinely and not just like what they want to inform you of, but everything as far as like the side effects of estrogen, testosterone, and everything. If you're able to iron those issues out, I still think I lean in favor of informed consent just because I hate to say it, but if you regret it later down the line, that is just kind of on you. It's the case with Hendrix, it's the case with Miles, like pretty much anybody who detransitions is like. At the end of the day, stay informed, obviously, like do your own research, but you kind of have to end up, you kind of have to just like grapple with that at the end of the day. the questions you have about your identity if you choose to detransition are going to probably look pretty similar to the questions you had about yourself when you chose to transition in the first place. Like, it's the same kind of like questions that you're asking yourself, the same level of introspection that you have to apply. It's just in a different direction, right? You're either ruined by your body's natural puberty that you went through initially, or you're ruined by the one that you put yourself through if you choose to transition, right? So it's kind of like, worst case scenario, it seems like you really just end up back at square one. You know, you don't seem to really regress. It's just more like back to the drawing board. Okay, now I've had this new experience. Where does that leave me with my identity now? And so versus like, I see it more as like it's all linear. It's all part of the same progress or process versus like, oh, I've made a colossal mistake and I have to go back. That is to say, if you've been properly informed of everything that could happen, right? If you haven't been properly informed, if people hide things from you, I think you can make a different argument insofar as like how much people were actually able to agree to like that linear process of experimenting with your identity and whatever. But that might just be like a difference in perspective we have. I definitely want to hear your thoughts though.
Well, right now, the doctors don't even know what it is they're treating.
Right.
So like I can't understand how you can say, oh, it's on the people who regret it. It's like just deal with you're an adult, deal with the consequences of your own actions. But we don't apply that to any other facet of medicine, of healthcare, like where and so if this isn't healthcare, then let's say that. Like let's talk about transition as something like that. It's not medicine, it's not healthcare. But if it is medicine, if it is healthcare, then we need our doctors to actually know what it is they are treating, what they are diagnosing.
Yeah.
But as it is right now, it's just basically they don't know, the patient doesn't know, and yeah. So that's why I think it's a different can of worms than just like, oh, it's you're an adult, you do what you want with your body. But we're saying that this is healthcare. If this is healthcare, then our doctors need to know what it is that they're treating. They need to be able to accurately diagnose it, and that's not just on the individual patient to know.
No, you are absolutely right, and yeah. I should have probably clarified with the entire rant I went on earlier about the social thing. I this may be like a very like spicy take for some people, but I do lean more on the side of like it's not a medical condition and it's not necessarily healthcare in the way that we've classified things like cancer medication and whatnot. I know some people really don't like that, and it's that's fine. It's all up for discussion right now. But I do tend to lean on the side of like that is why I tend to be more informed consent, is because I don't really see it as like healthcare in the same way that I see like other things that are established in medical history, right, or medical literature.
Oh, right. Okay, so you're kind of coming out of transition more like kind of like a body modification decision that a person makes.
Well, yeah, and it is like it is a necessary thing. Like we were saying, there is like that oscillating like a spectrum of like how acceptable it is to be trans will sometimes dictate how many people end up transitioning versus how many people identify with like homosexuality instead. So it's like there is that necessity. You do need it. It isn't something that I think should be like barred, especially from adults, like from doing. But I don't think it's like. I think when people use like the life-saving medication lines and that kind of thing, it is true. Like it can save lives. It can help people, but it's not, I don't know if it helps save lives in the same way like ADHD medication might save lives or cancer medication might save lives. It's a unique type of treatment that is like, it is contingent on like social phenomenon that are like, it is contingent on like how society is moving. But it's still like something where people can greatly benefit from doing it if it's right for them, right? So that's why I tend to veer on the side of like informed consent, is like if the person decides like, again, assuming they know everything that's going to happen, if they decide that's what they want to do, it may be that it's just because of the society they're living in at the time they're alive that is like driving them to decide that this is like what they need to do for the time being. You know what I mean? Hope that makes sense. I know it's like a lot. It's like
I don't really follow. Yeah, I guess I've never thought about it in those terms. It's like I see it as either like there's the either like kind of the trans medicalist or gender affirming care kind of framework where this is life-saving necessary medical health care, or this is optional bodily modifications that people choose for different reasons.
Well, let me give you an analogy just to maybe kind of help contextualize it. Let's say, for example, we'll take homosexuality. Let's just say you're not actually born gay. You're not actually born that way, and it is just a mixture of nature and nurture that determine your sexuality through a series of developmental experiences you have from childhood up until adolescence and then into your young adult years. Right, your entire experience, no matter what it is, like it doesn't matter. You can't really classify it. It's going to be a very individualistic thing. There may be some common trends you see between yourself and other homosexuals, right? But overall, like it is going to be like an individual thing that kind of shapes your sexuality and your fetishes, your kinks, anything like that goes with that gender and sexual identity, right? Does that make you any less valid as a homosexual? Does that mean that we should ban gay marriage? Does that mean that we should be anti-gay just because you're not born that way and it's not like a thing that you can diagnose or that you can cure? I would argue no, right? I would argue that like it doesn't matter if you're like born that way or not. You've become this way as a result of like society as well as like your own biological makeup, whatever that might be. It is a combination of things that have determined that you're going to be homosexual in your life, right? I would say that it's like, that's just the way it is. That's who you are. Who you are is not just who you're like the set of genetics you're born with, like when you come out of your mom's womb. It's a series of things that happen throughout your life and a series of experiences that kind of make up who you are, right? So, like, it's similar with transitioning. Whether you're AAP, AGP, whether you genuinely are just gay and you just want to cross-dress and it's more fun for you or whatever, I would say that that's just fine, right? Like, you can be who you are. It's most likely a combination of your hormonal and genetic makeup combined with your experiences in life and how you've come to perceive yourself in context of like the society that you're in, right? And like you said, you even said like that, there's a crossover, a definite crossover between like like autosexuality and homosexuality, right? Like there is definitely, you see like a crossover there. So I think that it's one of those things. It's like, if you wanted to put it in like super simple terms, society fucked you up. Now you have to kind of live with the consequences. And it's kind of like, how you decide to live with those consequences, whether you decide you're going to live as a homosexual or you're going to be a transsexual or, vice versa, both, whatever. It's kind of going to be up to like, the society that fucked you up and what kind of society you're kind of living in, if that makes sense. I hope that kind of like clarifies things a little bit more.
Well, yeah, obviously I see a lot of overlap between, let's say trans identity, or having a cross sex identity or something like that, and homosexuality. I think the two often have similar causes, and it depends on the time and place, how that's going to manifest. But when we're talking about transition, we're talking about medical intervention that
Right.
requires an outside force that's often irreversible. We're talking about surgeries. We're talking about endocrine disruption that again has to be externally provided by a physician, and that oftentimes people come to regret. Like if you have a gay phase in high school,
You kind of less consequences unless you as long as you're safe about it, right?
Yeah.
Like less consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But when you have a trans phase in high school and you take testosterone and your voice is lowered and like these aren't it's not just, oh, this is how I happen to be. It's like this is an external medical intervention that you have sought, been subjected to, however you want to phrase it, but it is a medical intervention.
Right.
And like that's just different than having a gay.
I definitely agree with you on that. It's like obviously if you're seeking out medical transition, that is just going to be like it is going to be an involved process, right? I would definitely want to know if I am like let's say I identify as a male or whatever. I want to transition, but my body just can't handle testosterone. Like that's something I would want to know before I do it, and especially for high schoolers. I tend to be on the fence with like teen or child transition. I think like puberty blockers overall seem like a very dangerous thing. I definitely would want to see more research before just handing them out to kids, right? If it's an extreme case and it's like we've tried everything else, like okay, fine, look at it if that works. I think if you're like 16 years old and you're a male and you want to start taking estrogen, again, would be more open to that for sure. But I think especially for like testosterone, 18 is probably like a good time to like start doing that, right? And that is because like what you said, like there is like there is more of a risk there. I would be curious. Let's say hypothetically that we let kids transition, we let teenagers transition, but there is zero. You don't, if you choose to detransition or you change your mind, societally, you will just be accepted as like the gender that you choose to identify that with after that. So I transitioned for 7 years. I'm Hendrix. I decided to detransition, and everybody now sees me as a woman. And there's no backlash, I guess, for the changes I've made to my body. Right? Like in that hypothetical, do you think that the consequences of transitioning would still be as severe, or are you more about like the physical effects are wrong to go through if it's not meant for you, period, versus like the social backlash you might get for sticking out now as like a masculinized female who can't go back, who's going to be kind of like stuck with those changes forever. You know what I mean? There's like an implication of sticking out or being othered because of the changes you've made to your body.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't really know.
And it's okay. I'm genuinely just curious.
Yeah, because I don't think I haven't thought that much about. I mean, obviously, in certain in individual instances where I like am empathizing with somebody who's trying to undo that, and they're in this limbo space of no longer identifying as a trans man or no longer identifying as a man, but still being externally perceived as such. Like yeah, that's tough. But like I guess yeah, I'm not sure what is more important. I just think limiting limiting the instance of that happening is, I think, I just think in general, medical transition is is on a whole not medically good for us and is quite dangerous in a lot of cases and should be a last ditch effort to treat a psychological ailment, and that will also reduce the incidence of people who are then have to face the social consequences of trying to undo it after the fact. um yeah so we're in this place now where there are many people who blur the sex boundaries, right? Like I see so many people in my daily life. It's like I don't know if that person is male or female. I don't know if they're intentionally trans or if they're detrans or if they like something else is going on there. Like there are just a lot of people now that exist in the middle, essentially, that cannot be easily sexed either way, and that's going to be true of trans people and detransition people throughout, like, for the
Yeah.
foreseeable. Like it's just kind of the state of our society now. um, I think a lot of detransitioners, who do have dysphoria that's not going to go away, a lot of them will appreciate the fact that they don't actually look like a woman anymore, that they look, masculinized to a certain degree. I don't think everybody who detransitions like fundamentally regrets every single change that happened to them. And I think a lot of people who seek transition are themselves not likely to want to just go back to blending in as like a regular woman in society, because obviously that didn't have much appeal to them in the first place. Like they're not fundamentally different person on the other side of
Right.
transition. Like I think a lot of detransitioners, don't necessarily have, you know, some are severely traumatized by the sound of their voice now, by the reflection in the mirror. Like that's
Yeah.
horrible. But I think fortunately, a lot of them aren't that torn up about it. It's like they kind of like that their voice is deeper. They kind of like that their face is more masculinized. They kind of,
Right.
it's like they're happy to be a woman and they're living their life as a woman, but they don't. Yeah, they like some of the irreversible masculinizing effect, and great for them. That's good. Like it's good if you can feel comfortable with things that you can't undo.
Right.
But
So it is like in that sense, it's kind of like what I was saying about like it's a linear process, not really like a before versus after, like the transitioning part is just as much of a part of them as like who they were beforehand. They're not necessarily looking to go
right.
back. They're just like progressing forward and they're out of the trans phase, and they might look a little different, but now they're on to something new and different, and like yeah. So
Yeah,
fair enough,
yeah.
fair enough. That being said, like if that is the case for a lot of detransitioners, I guess that kind of like I don't know how that lines up with wanting to limit like transition if a lot of them are not like really regretting it, right? Now, granted, I don't know what the regret rates are and that kind of thing, right? But that is like an interesting like weird position to be in, because you do hear a lot of these like very vocally anti-trans like detransitioners who are very much like ban it for everybody. I know there's like I think the Prisha lady was like people shouldn't be able to access it until 25 or something like that. It's like you have some extreme takes out there, but it seems like for the most part, and I even know detransitioners who are totally fine with what they did. It seems like for the most part, the medical regret, at least for adults who do it, doesn't seem to be super duper high.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And I think the medical regret in males, like, so it depends, because detrans or transition involves so many different medical procedures, right?
yeah.
So the people who have the most severe regret are usually post-operative.
Mm,
Either females who have had hysterectomies and have realized that they want to have children after the fact.
mm.
That's where you get a lot of profound and severe regret. Post phalloplasty, for because it's just
That's a crazy surgery to
yeah.
get to, like just in
Yes,
general.
yes,
It's like,
yes, it
that's
is.
crazy.
Yes, yes. For
That's
so
a
many
really scary
reasons, there's a
one.
lot. Yes, yes. I don't recommend anyone do it, no matter your degree of
My
dysphoria.
ass
Do
is not
not.
getting phalloplasty. I could say
Yeah,
that much. Like,
yeah,
absolutely not.
yeah,
Like, I do
yeah.
not want my
Good,
dick to
good.
rot
Yeah,
off. Like, no, thank you.
yeah.
Like,
No, no. Do not want to be anorgasmic. No,
yeah,
no.
no, no.
Or yeah, like the urinary complications. Yeah,
No,
it's just
absolutely not.
it's scary, scary shit. And then the um uh, uh obviously post SRS males too are similar situations where they're all these medical complications. Often they are uh, uh, yeah, no sexual sensation anymore. Like
Yeah,
just so when we're talking about those kinds of surgeries that either leave you um, that take away your ability to have children, or that take away your ability for sexual gratification, or your ability to safely urinate, like so that's a very serious thing versus I kind of regret you know having top surgery. I kind of miss having breasts, or I kind of miss um, or like I think a lot of the male detransitioners, they kind of like the feminizing effects that, even if they don't identify as a trans woman
yeah.
anymore, they're fully, they appreciate, because again, they have the underlying psychology that brought them to transition in the first place. Like they like the androgenizing effects. So you see that with a lot of the males and female detransitioners, when it comes to like the effects of testosterone, the effects of estrogen, or in the males the effects of their facial feminization surgery, their electrolysis, things like that. Those are things that people often are perfectly happy with post transition, but when we or post detransition. But when we're talking about lower um, genital related surgeries or reproductive organ related surgeries, that's where you get the really, really profound and debilitating regret. So we could say, yeah, that should be kept much, much more rigorously than hormone access, right? Like
Right, right.
I definitely really to see that's those are
Well, and anything
different
having to do with
gatekeeping.
like your reproductive organs should absolutely be
Yeah,
like you should be really really careful, because that is definitely like again, like it almost kind of like reinforces the point that like your how you're sexed and how you present like oh god, what am I trying to say? Basically, like that's a serious like a seriously important part of your identity. Is it like the genitals you have and the way you're able to like sexually function and reproduce is like huge part of your identity. That's definitely something you want to be really careful with when you're like messing around with that, and it's definitely on like a different level than like just taking estrogen or testosterone for sure. Before I
yep.
forget, because somebody a few minutes ago said something, asked you a question in chat, and I want to make sure you are able to answer that. Kotovic says, Aaron, do you think with more research and gatekeeping that the pissed off lawyer would not have transitioned?
No, he probably would have transitioned. Yeah,
fair enough. Fair enough.
I think he's got the same exact dysphoria I do. So I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, like, I'm saying like enough to do everything you can to jump through those hoops to get what you want more than anything. Like,
Right.
For that same reason, I just don't see the medical detransition coming to fruition there. But no, that was another thing that kind of. Yeah. I suspect Hendricks would have transition. Um, yeah, I'm not sure that. Yeah, when I'm talking about like research and gatekeeping, I don't know what the end result of that's going to look like. So I don't
Yeah.
know who will ultimately, make it through whatever that ends up being. But I think for people who have, you know, yeah, just the way everything about the way that he has presented himself up until yesterday suggests that he's very, very stoked on the masculinizing effects of the last 7 years. So
I was gonna say, like, the bro is definitely enjoying like the masculinizing stuff. So he's doing okay. He's doing okay. The detransition is definitely more like, the pronouns in bio might change for a little bit, and that's about it. It's like it's a similar LARP. So.
Yeah, I'm feeling like this might happen. And like for my mental health, does everybody mind just continuing to use he/him pronouns, please? Like, I just see something like that coming in.
Dude, I was saying earlier, like I feel like what's going to happen is that like, if this is a Brianna Wu influence thing, I think what's going to happen is that he's eventually going to find out that she's a textbook narcissist. They're going to have a falling out, and then he's going to be very confused for a little while about what is actually going on and how he actually feels. And he's going to take a break for a little bit, and then in a few weeks, he's going to just start going back to normal and tweeting again, like nothing happened. Yeah. So like, yeah.
A lot of AGPs will do this too. They'll be like detransition and then retransition and and there's a big announcement for each one. And like, my new friends, they were terrible. They groomed me, and now I'm going to go back to you guys because you're my real friends, and this is who I really am. And then they ping pong, and he'll just probably be the first female version of that we're witnessing.
Right. Yeah, it'll be a new thing. Very subversive. Very like cool. Finally seeing the FTM step up to the plate, and act like the MTFs do. It's like, no, I'm kidding.
Very masculine coded, Hendricks.
Exactly. Yeah. BPD, I don't know. It has been like a general frustration for me with the trans community, especially like FTMs. It's like, and I've had this like, I was ranting about this in some group chat earlier today. I was just like, it feels like, and again, this is just because I'm on like my mini feminist arc. It feels like when gay men or when MTFs do something, it's like considered subversive, or just when males in general do something, it's like considered subversive. But then if a female does it, it's like seen as cringe instead. That's been like something I've kind of noticed, and especially with FTMs, like in the trans community, they make it very difficult for me to like hold that position and simultaneously like support FTMs, because a lot of them are just genuine. It seems like they are like legitimately corny and cringy, and it's like very difficult to like get positive representation, not because they're like abusive or like assholes or anything, but just because they're extremely corny. And it's like really hard to like, Hendricks is a great example, like with the like poker face and everything. It's just like, bro, like just be yourself a little bit, loosen up, it's okay, like
relax.
yeah it's like, I don't know if you felt like that ever, but
well, what I found is like doing my my internet researching stuff, being in like the MTF spaces versus being in the FTM spaces. The FTM spaces like feels like a slumber party. It's like the most girly place on the internet is FTM spaces. Right?
And I kind of live for it. In a way, it's kind of fun, but it's also just like, holy shit, like calm down sometimes. Like
just the validation and their concerns and like just the way they talk. It's just like naturally, because it's a room full of females, it's just very, very feminine. And then you go over into the MTF spaces, and it's just like
they're brutal to each other. It's so funny.
And it's like a D&D party, and I don't know. It's so clearly Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you really
Yeah,
cannot
we are so
escape like
clearly
the
of our sex. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't escape it to a degree.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like I personally have gotten kind of like accustomed to that. I kind of love it when I'm like around a bunch of other like masculinized females, so to whatever degree, right? And you're able to just kind of like shoot the shit and like speak almost kind of plainly with each other because everybody kind of understands where the other person's at. We all kind of come from the same like background, so there is like something cool and fun about that. But it's also like I feel like it's almost more fun to do that privately and then just like live as like a regular male. Like in if you're doing anything like representation wise or advocacy wise, I feel like you can't just act like that all the time. Like you have to be willing to like take some heat and be a bit more like aggressive and assertive and combative sometimes if you're going to do advocacy as an FTM. Like you can't just be doing like the validation friendliness shit all the time because people just don't respect that, in my opinion. I mean, maybe you can argue that we should be contesting that and not like conforming, but for me, I think like a little bit of combativeness and a little bit of willingness to like talk shit and sling shit with other people is definitely something we could see more in the FTM community.
I don't know. A lot of us are, quite, aspy as well. Like there's that overlap that
Fair,
causes
yeah.
some social issues. I, yeah, I don't know. I feel like people should just be what's natural to themselves. I don't know. Like a lot
Yeah,
of I just think like a lot of FTMs are like a lot more like personality wise more feminine than a lot of like just regular women is like something I've noticed. And like there's a joke that like the FTMs are shorter than most women. Like there's something like weird. Like I don't know what it is about. It obviously is not always the case. I mean, there's a lot of like pretty masculine behavior wise, masculine height or whatever in FTMs, but just like on a general level, it just seems like it's I don't know. I don't know. I just think that people should be themselves.
yeah,
What's natural to them. Don't try to pretend to be like like it's so cringy when like the MTFs are trying to act all like sweet and timid, and it's like I
that's
don't know.
fair.
It's just
Yeah,
like sometimes there are many of them because again they're very autistic and sensitive a lot of the times, but and they are genuinely like kind of like meek personality wise, but the ones who are like just like doing like the
ooh,
sweet
woo,
emoji
yeah,
faces. Yeah, it's just
yeah.
like, oh, fuck off. Like, yeah.
And you are right about that. I do need to clarify. Like it, as much as I just complain about like FTMs not being combative enough, when they FTMs are just as cringy when they overdo the performative masculinity. Like I've definitely fallen for that. I think it's especially more when I did not like before I transitioned. I was like so bad. I want to block out some of the things I used to say and like the way I used to act back in the day. Right? It's like awful. So it's like there is that like flip side. It's like do not do the like chest puffing. Do not try to out macho men like cis guys. You're never gonna win. It's never gonna happen. Just like be yourself, like you said, be yourself. It's like, but if you have the ability or you are interested in the ability to shit sling and roast people and be like like clever or whatever, I encourage it. I think it's definitely something we need to see more of as well. Like, but to your point, the performative masculinity is super cringe. Like, don't do it.
I mean, that's one of the things that clued me into the whole AAP being in the butch lesbian community because that was like the like toxic masculinity. Like I'm gonna beat up my bros for this feminine chick. Like it's like you
so
are
bad.
so ridiculous right now.
It's so bad.
Ridiculous.
And it sucks, but so many guys will just make fun of you behind your back, like when you do like that kind of shit. Like they don't take you serious. It's not going to get you any more street cred with cis men if you act that way. Like they're just never. They're either going to be cool with you or they're not. You know what I mean? Like it's never going to work out in that way. So no, absolutely agree with that. Like it's more important to just be yourself. And if you end up being a more feminine trans guy as a result, just be a more feminine trans guy. Like who fucking cares at the end of the day? Like it's all good.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't want to keep you too long if you got to go, but I've definitely enjoyed this so far. So
it has been fun, but wrap it up sometime.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have like, so Malcolm was also saying in chat, Aaron Kimberly is another example of detrans, but presents fully male. Do you know Aaron Kimberly?
So he and I used to be good friends. We did the Transparency podcast together.
Oh, nice.
I'm not sure if he's still identifying as a detransitioner or not.
because this guy is
Mhm.
like massively passing. Like, hold on, I'll just show the audience. Like, this is Aaron Kimberly. I know, like, for a while he identified as like a testo butch or something like that, like a testosterone dyke or something. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but how was that with how was that experience on Transparency? So I actually have not seen that podcast before, so I'm a little out of the loop on that.
Oh no, it was great. We did, I think, about 2.5 years. Just interviewed a lot of different trans people, dysphoric people, detransition people, a lot of people like in the like the therapy space, providers. Had a lot of like the big name turfs, as you say that as a not a pejorative, but like just whatever. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
like we had Helen Joyce on. We had Helen Joyce. What's her name? The Professor Stock, Kathleen Stock. We
Okay.
had Michael Bailey on.
Oh shit! Hell yeah!
Ray Blanchard, the good doc himself, on. Yeah, and then just a bunch of trans
Respect.
people, detrans people. But yeah, there's a good backlog there. But yeah, we started going. Yes, did our started doing our separate things about a year and a half ago. I got all gung ho on this whole auto heterosexuality project, and he went more in the kind of gender or like the feminist lesbian activism thing, which is
Fair enough.
not my
Yeah.
angle. So, but no, the transparency as a whole project is a lot of
Interesting.
good stuff there. Very yeah, again, probably a little bit too turfy for most of your audience, but
I'm hoping
might
to
learn something. Yeah.
I'm hoping to slowly get a good mix of people because I do actually enjoy like talking to certain turfs about. 1 second, I'm looking up Transparency podcast so I can link it. But I do enjoy like a mixture of like turfs and like cis people and trans people and stuff. So hopefully there's a more mixed reception because I do like hearing different perspectives on that. But yeah, 1 second, I'm trying to find you guys. Oh, there we are. Just gonna.
Oh, and then also link the Navel Gaze, which is the
Yes.
recent project I'm doing with Tali Bots. We've kind of been slow in recording and releasing lately, but yeah, we had you on. That was a blast.
Yeah, I was on the Naval Gaze.
Talking to just talking to people who either think we're onto something with the auto heterosexuality thing, and yeah, people who like identify with it themselves or want to tell us what we're getting wrong. That's also a good time. But yeah, that's where most of my thoughts and feelings on the gender stuff can be found there, and it's probably actually more trans positive, I'd say, than the transparency podcast was. Just because, yeah.
I will say, like, everything I've seen has been like very empathy driven, very like open minded, understanding. Even if there's disagreements, like you guys have always been like pretty open to just like having open and honest conversations. Is that something that's something like I really appreciate. Even if there's some disagreement there, like it's just really nice to have like conversations where there isn't like a direct like ideological like push to get you in like a certain box and narrative and like push you in a certain direction. Like you guys are very, very good about being open and like kind of objective about the whole thing. So like I personally really appreciate that, like, because I've always wanted to see more like conversations about like this kind of like aspect of transitioning and transgenderism. So it's really cool to see. I linked both channels. I'm going to link your Twitter as well so people can follow you. But yeah, trying to think. Do you have any closing statements? Anything you want to leave people with?
I think just don't. A lot of people, what they post online is it's basically it's interpersonal. It's emotional manipulation. Is a lot of what people post on social media. They want you to engage with what they are trying to sell of themselves. They want you to believe it. And I have a bad habit. I think it's a good habit. Most people seem to think it's a bad habit of just not believing what people want me to believe about them. I just stand back, watch their behavior, see how these things roll out, and I feel immediately like this adverse allergic reaction to what I interpret to be emotional manipulation, which is like either praise me or pity me. Like, no, I'm not going to do either. I'm going to figure out what's what's actually going on here, or what. Anyway,
You're gonna
my
get you're
final
gonna get
statement
your
is
own
be
perspective on
critical.
it, but by
Yeah,
observing
yeah.
behavior, not just buying into what people are saying. I think that's great
Right. And I would
advice.
just like
Yeah,
other people to do that. Yeah, I'd like other people, yeah, to do that, to not just, to understand that you're being sold something all the time on social media,
yeah,
and you can decide whether to buy it or not. But yeah, I
100%.
err on the side of being critical.
100%
Not cruel,
agree. 100%
compassionate.
agree.
Yeah.
No,
Awesome.
I just like, and
Thank you
I
so
think,
much.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It was great having you on. We'll definitely do this again if something comes up. If since you take such like an objective approach and you like to stand back and observe, I might have you on more often to kind of like debrief me on like your objective opinion on whatever is going on in the trans community, because sometimes I struggle keeping up. But like, if you're down, I'll definitely have you on again, and I appreciate you coming on tonight. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks. It's been
All right,
awesome.
man. Good to see you. Good to see you. Peace.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Like and subscribe.